Hello and welcome to the Farmers Supply Association Agri Report. I'm Randy Klepeczka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association. We're filming on April 12th this year, and after a very wet February, a very wet March, where we had, I think, roughly figured this morning, 13 to 15 inches of rain in our general area over those 2 months. Very wet months. The pattern has changed since we've gone to April. We did get one rain, I guess last week, April the 5th. We got generally, ½ inch, 3/4. Some places got a little more than that, but generally not a real heavy rain. But that's so far that's all we've had in April, and things certainly in this second week of April have picked up tremendously. A lot of field work going on. There's still a few guys that are still been kind of wet. I think everybody's probably got some dry ground by now, but things have really picked up, and we're getting a lot of stuff done. It's really kind of one of the better starts we've had in a while, I think. So, we always have a way of getting humbled when we have these kind of starts, but hopefully, this start will transfer to the rest of the year, and we can have a really good year. The old days of planting crops in a certain order and a certain time, they're a distant memory now. We're planting corn, we're planting rice, we're planting soybeans, some all on the same farm, even on the same day. So things have really changed on that. We've learned that certainly beans planted early have much better yield potential. And we've always known that rice and corn have better yield potential with those early plantings, but we've learned about the beans, and a lot of the yield contest guys and how well they do, and the thing they've always mentioned is early planting. So because of that, we just plant everything at once anymore. Makes it a little hard on the co-op and other suppliers, but we're getting it done, and certainly we hope we can get a lot done in April this year. I want to just talk about the different crops that we've got in the field right now. Just give a brief summary of each and kind of where we're at with each one of those. Some of the things we need to be looking at, the status of the crop right now and things like that. I'm going to start with wheat, and you can see I got a wheat field right behind me here. And as far as the stage of our wheat crop right now, this field's a little later than many of the others around. This field is not yet heading. I've got a lot of fields I look at that are heading. Some of them are already starting to flower, but this field's a little bit later, so it's really in what we call the boot stage. It's before it starts heading out. But as you can see, it looks pretty good. Most of the wheat fields I look at, the high ground looks good. The low ground is either drowned out completely or kind of yellowed up. But this field drains pretty well, and you see, like a lot of fields, it looks pretty good, especially where it drains pretty well. So, kind of the things we need to be looking at in wheat right now. Some people have been looking at making extra shot of nitrogen or a final shot of nitrogen here lately. Some of that went out last week. Some guys, I think there's an airplane flying right now in our area that's doing that, and we're considering doing that on some other fields, such as the one behind us right here. So, usually we've always done typically a 2-shot wheat pass, and here comes one of the airplanes right by us right now. He flew right over the top of us, and luckily he didn't go low enough to get David. He's fertilizing corn, and anyway, that's also going on right now. But as far as the wheat, if you might put a normal amount of nitrogen out there and it's been really wet, if your wheat is starting to yellow up a little bit or it's been extremely wet, you might want to look at making that final boot shot right now, and that's kind of where we're at with that. And you don't necessarily have to make that. I think if you're running short of nitrogen, you'll definitely get a benefit from that. If it's a higher ground and you've got plenty of nitrogen out there, you might not get a lot of benefit from that. But be thinking about that right now if you haven't made that already. Another thing we need to be looking at with wheat is fungicide applications. I've been looking at wheat this morning, a lot of septoria showing up, which is a fungus disease in wheat. Most of our guys that are growing wheat are trying to wait until the flowering stage and make an application for head scabs, or we're trying to outrun that septoria, I guess you might say, and delay our application of a fungicide until our wheat is flowering. So that's where we're at right now. If you want to make that shot for scab control in wheat, again, wait for the flowering stage, which is very obvious when you look at those wheat heads, and then make it right at that time. You definitely don't want to make it before the head is about half out, and then after flowering is over, you need to get it done pretty quick right there. But again, fungicide applications for septoria, which is out there now, and a preventative application for scab, again, during the flowering stage. Okay, we're going to switch to corn right now over on the other side of the turn row here. There's actually an airplane flying fertilizer on corn right now, so we can talk about that during this part of it. But again, just a lot of stuff going on right now with our spring weather pattern. Corn is now emerging. If you'll look at this field, I think David's going to really zoom in on it. You can see the small corn plants have just come up within the last few days. We've got a good stand of corn out here, and there comes the airplane's going to be applying some fertilizer out here. A couple of things we need to be thinking about in corn. We're actually in a little bit of a lull right now, but there are a couple of things we're going to need to be doing with our corn crop real quick right now. One is weed control. Most people have a good residual out there, and it's been activated by rain, so we've got good residual weed control out there. At some point, those residuals will break, and we'll start having some weeds break through, and we'll need to make a timely post-emergence application in these fields for weed control. But again, we have some really good residuals for corn, so things are clean right now, and we'll just have to wait till we have some breakthroughs on the corn. As far as fertilizer on corn, in general, we've got time to get our fertilizer out. We like to get our nitrogen out. We've got more time than we once thought, at least the 8-leaf stage, and we don't lose really any yield until at least that point. So we've got plenty of time to play with on getting those side dress nitrogen applications out there. Now, sulfur sometimes may be a different story, especially on some of our really sandy ground, and that's what was actually applied in this field right now is a little ammonium sulfate application to get some sulfur out there. Some of this sand around here north of Tuckerman is really notorious for sulfur deficiency. It seems like if you get behind on it, sometimes you can't catch up. So this farmer's really proactive on getting his sulfur out there, and that's what we're doing right now is getting some sulfur applied out there right now so we don't have sulfur deficiency. But you can see the corn's just emerged, but we know that corn, when it gets warm, it'll blow out the top real quick, and it'll be head high before you know it. And we'll hopefully get this thing going real good here in a little while. I'd like to switch to soybeans and then rice. Again, soybeans, we keep planting them earlier and earlier, and we've got quite a few soybeans planted in along with the corn and rice right now. One thing I want to be mentioning with soybeans, of course, our number one weed is pigweeds, and I just got a report a couple of days ago from a chemical company rep who works down in all of the state. And he said he's seeing pigweeds emerge in east central and southeast Arkansas, so we got to be aware of that. I haven't seen any up this far north yet, but we got to be ready for those pigweeds and take care of them when they start emerging, because they are our number one weed in soybeans. And the big thing is to start clean. Before you plant those beans, or certainly before those beans emerge, you need to take care of any emerged pigweed that are out there. So be thinking about that, be scouting for them. And generally our go-to material is gramoxone or paraquat on those pigweeds. There are some other choices, but we don't want to overuse those and cause resistance. They're all Roundup resistant now, we know that. But again, gramoxone's a great choice to burn those down. If you're in an area where you can apply gramoxone, some people are really hesitant to apply gramoxone because of getting away and drifting and hurting other crops. But if you can use gramoxone, that's by far the best way to control those pigweeds. So again, that's a big key with soybeans. I want to switch to rice. We don't have a rice field right here, but I want to talk about rice to finish up the program. And again, just like with any kind of weed control, you've got to start clean is the big key. And we're talking especially about barnyard grass in our rice crop. Barnyard grass is really the number one weed. If you have a bad red rice problem, that's bad for you too. But otherwise, barnyard grass is the number one weed in our rice crop. So we want to make sure we start clean, but because if we don't start clean and we try to control that grass later on in the season, it's going to be very hard to control. So start clean. Generally, before the rice comes up, you want to have something with Roundup in it. Roundup's still very effective on controlling that. So like a Roundup Sharpen combination or a Roundup First Shot combination will be your best option there. Sharpen and First Shot both have 0 plant back, so you can apply those to the field, right up till planting without any issue at all. So again, Roundup Sharpen, Roundup First Shot, or if you just have a grass type plants, you can just go straight Roundup. But that's your best way to get that barnyard grass and make sure you start clean. The other option would be tillage, and sometimes tillage may be the way to go to, but the thing with tillage, it's going to dry the ground out if you're going to plant. So again, those herbicide applications are generally a little better because we're not going to disturb the soil, and we're not going to dry things out real quickly. So that's what we need to do is start clean. Then we need to start overlapping those residuals. You've heard me say that for years now. Overlap those residuals. Most people are going to start with a command or a command facet combination. Those are both what we call pre-emerge materials. we can put those out right after the drill leaves the field, or even before that actually. But put those out right away after planting and get a rain, and then we'll get some pretty good residual control out of those materials, Command and Facet. One thing I want to mention with Command and Facet both, we don't want to apply those on newly, freshly leveled soil, so let's try to avoid that, because we can have some damage to the rice if we do apply those on those freshly cut soil, so let's avoid that. Then after that, we go to what we call our delayed pre-materials. These are materials that we have to put out after the rice seed has actually imbibed its moisture for germination. So usually that's, if we got good moisture, that's going to be 4 or 5 days after planting, you can start applying those. And the main ones we talk about there are Prowl and Bolero. So those are very good delayed pre-materials. They're very good to overlap after your Command application to get extended grass control there. Prowl and Bolero are also, they're usually pretty safe on cut ground. They're a little more tolerant of that than the Command and Facet are, so they're a good option right there. A couple of different weed situations we're facing, or certainly we faced in the last several years, is annual sedges, the flat sedge and the white margin sedge. Sharpen and Bolero are our two main pre-materials for those. A lot of people will put their Sharpen out with their Command if they know they have a flat sedge problem. Also, again, delayed pre or later, we can turn to Bolero for a good pre-emerge control of those annual sedges. So let's try to be proactive against those annual sedges when they're, hopefully keep them from coming up and make them easier to control. Another thing we can look at early on is League. League is a material that we can use for yellow nut sedge and the black seeds like coffee bean and indigo. So those are some options. Again, start clean and overlap your residuals, and hopefully we can get we got to have the rains to activate these residuals or they're not going to work very well. But start clean, overlap residuals, get them activated, and then if you have to, make timely post-emerge applications, and hopefully we'll be on our way to a clean crop. So again, we're off to a really pretty fast start, a good start, and hopefully this, the weather will cooperate, and we can really have a good and an early crop in 2023. This has been Randy Kulpechka with your Farmers Supply Association Agri Report.